Three sounds: a phone hitting marble floor, a baby crying somewhere down a corridor, and the slow, deliberate footsteps of the most dangerous man in Korea walking toward a room he did not know was about to become the most dangerous place in his empire. The phone lay face up on the floor. Her uncle's voice was still coming through the speaker. Olachi, are you there? Talk to me, small and distant and powerless against the size of what had just detonated inside her chest. Ihan Han killed her father. She said the words inside her head in Igbo first, then English. Then she said them again because the first two times her brain had simply refused to process them the way you refuse to look directly at something blinding. Ihan Han killed your father. She was sitting on the edge of the hospital bed in the suite that Ihan had furnished for her arrival in Seoul. Everything she had ever mentioned wanting was in this room. Every small comfort catalogued and provided with the terrifying thoroughness of a man whose love language was intelligence gathering. And the room that had felt like care now felt like evidence. Every thoughtful detail recontextualized. Every perfect provision suddenly sinister. He knew who she was. Her hands were flat on her thighs. She was doing the thing her mother had taught her, pressing her palms down against something solid when the world became too large. Find the ground, Ne. Find what is real, what was real. Her sons were real. Jae-won and Jae-min behind a door she could not open, 2 hours old and already caught inside a war they did not know existed. Her body's pain was real, the stitches pulling, the particular exhaustion of a woman who had just moved 2 human beings out of her body and had not slept and had not eaten and had just received information that rearranged the entire architecture of her last 2 years. And Ihan was real. Somewhere in this building, walking these corridors, occupying this empire, Ihan was real. The man she loved. The man she had given her body and her trust, and 2 sons too. The man who had looked at her from across a Lagos hotel lounge and seen not a woman with a broken bottle, but a target, a piece on a board he had been playing long before she knew the game existed. She picked up the phone. "I'm here," she said. Her uncle exhaled. "Thank God. Listen to me very carefully. Tell me everything," she said. "From the beginning. Tell me about my father and tell me about Ihan Han and do not leave anything out. But first, if you are watching this, you stayed. You came back. You pressed play on episode 2 and that means episode 1 did exactly what it was supposed to do. It grabbed you and it did not let go. This channel is built for people who want stories that feel like life. Stories about women who are strong and still get broken. About love that is real and still destroys. About betrayal that wears the face of the person you trusted most. If you have not subscribed yet, do it right now. Because what is about to happen in this episode is the kind of storytelling that people screenshot and send to their friends at midnight with no context. Like this video, share it, and let's go. Because Olachi Okonkwo is about to find out that her entire love story was built on the grave of her father, and Ihan Han is about to discover that the one woman he could not control is also the one woman who can destroy everything he has built. There was a room on the 42nd floor of Han Empire Tower that did not appear on any official building schematic. No windows, climate-controlled, soundproofed with material that cost more per square meter than most Seoul apartments, a long obsidian table that seated 20. And at the head of that table, always, Ihan Han. Tonight there were 7 men in that room. 6 of them were senior figures in the Han organization. Men who between them controlled port operations across 4 countries, 3 governments that owed the Han family significant favors, and enough financial infrastructure to destabilize a small economy. Men who had not been nervous in professional settings for decades. Tonight they were nervous. Because Ihan had walked into the room 11 minutes ago and had not sat down. He stood at the far end of the table with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled precisely to the elbow, and he had not spoken yet. He was looking at a document, reading it. The only sound was the soft movement of pages and the careful breathing of 6 men who understood instinctively that the quality of this silence was not safe. Finally, Park Sung-jin, Ihan's second in command, the only man in the organization who had known Ihan since childhood and therefore the only man who could read him with any accuracy, spoke. "The Busan situation can wait until—" "It cannot wait." Ihan's voice was very quiet. It always was. People who expected a man of his reputation to be loud had never met him, Volume was for men who needed to perform power. Ihan simply had it. 3 of our shipping containers were redirected without authorization. I want to know who gave the order, who executed it, and who received payment. I want those 3 answers on this table within the hour. Nobody moved. The hour, Ihan repeated, looking up from the document for the first time, and something in his eyes made the most senior man at the table, a 64-year-old who had survived 3 gang wars and 2 assassination attempts, look down at his hands. Yes, sir, the man said quietly. Phones came out, calls were made. The room became a controlled storm of urgent whispered conversations as 6 powerful men scrambled to deliver answers to the one man none of them wanted to disappoint. Park Sung-jin waited until the others were occupied and then moved to Ihan's side. The birth, he said quietly. Are you? Handled, Ihan said. Park looked at him carefully. They had grown up together in the Han compound. He knew every version of Ihan's face the way you know the variations of weather in a place you have lived your whole life. Right now the face said, "Do not push," but underneath it, underneath the absolute composure that Ihan wore like armor, Park saw something he had not seen in a very long time. Fracture lines. She will not accept the arrangement, Park said, not a question. She will have time to adjust. Ihan. Park's voice was very low. She just gave birth, tonight, and you. I said it is handled. The words landed like a door closing. Final. No handle on the other side. Park said nothing more. But he watched his oldest friend stand at the head of a room full of frightened, powerful men, and he saw the way Ihan's jaw was set, with a tension that had nothing to do with the Busan situation. And he thought about a woman upstairs in a hospital suite who had crossed an ocean for a man who did not know how to deserve her. And he thought, for the first time in a long time, this is not going to end the way Ihan thinks it will. Her uncle's name was Emeka Dre Okonkwo, and he was not actually her biological uncle. He was her father's oldest friend, a man who had sat at her father's table, eaten her mother's food, held Olachi at her naming ceremony, and called her his daughter ever since. He was also, she had understood as she grew older, a man who operated in spaces that did not appear in official records. He had resources, he had reach. He had the kind of quiet, dangerous competence that reminded her, now that she thought about it, of a certain Korean man she had been trying not to think about. Your father's name, Uncle Dre said, was Chukwuemeka Okonkwo. He was one of the most significant independent trade brokers operating between West Africa and East Asia in the early 2000s. He was building something, Olachi, something that would have been generational. Routes, relationships, infrastructure, completely independent of the major crime organizations. I know who my father was, she said carefully. You knew who he was at home, Uncle Dre said. You did not know who he was in the world. He kept those things separate to protect you and your mother. Uncle Dre, the Han family, he continued, saw his operation as a threat. Not because of what it was then, because of what it would become. Your father was building something that would have eventually undermined Han control of 4 major trade corridors. He was approached, offered an acquisition deal, a buyout. He refused. A pause. He refused twice. Olachi's hand tightened on the phone. He was 19, Uncle Dre said. He had just been formally installed as his father's operational heir. The order came from Han Sr. But the execution, he stopped. Olachi, the execution was Ihan's first official act as Han heir. The room tilted. She was 12 years old again for just one devastating second, standing in a doorway watching her mother receive the news, watching her mother's legs give way, watching the world she had known restructure itself around an absence that would never be filled. Her father. And Ihan had been 19 years old and had made a decision that had broken her family apart, and then 20 years later had walked into a Lagos hotel lounge and looked across the room at the broken family's daughter and, "He knew," she said. The words came out hollow. From the beginning, he knew who I was. I believe so, Uncle Dre said. Then why? Her voice cracked. She pressed her hand against her mouth, breathed, came back. Why would he bring me into his life? Why would he let me? She could not say fall in love with him. She could not say have his children. The words were too large for this moment. Why? That, Uncle Dre said, is what I intend to find out, in person. You're coming here. I am already on my way. His voice shifted, the uncle tone gone, something harder underneath. Olachi, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are inside the most fortified private building in Seoul. You are surrounded by Han men. Do not confront him. Do not let him know what you know. Not until I arrive. And when you arrive, a pause that carried weight. We get you and those boys out, he said simply. She had exactly 4 minutes between ending the call and the knock. 4 minutes to reconstruct her face, to take everything her uncle had just poured into her, the grief and the rage and the vertigo of a world reordered, and compress it somewhere behind her eyes where it would not show. She had done this before. At 12, when she held her mother while her mother fell apart. At 22, when a client betrayed her and she finished the meeting with a smile and destroyed him professionally afterward. At 27, when she sat across from Ihan in a Seoul restaurant and felt herself falling past the point of no return and told herself she was in control. She was very good at compression. She was sitting upright in the bed, hands folded, face arranged into something that read as exhausted grief, accurate enough to be believable, when the door opened. Ihan walked in. He was still in the black suit from earlier. No jacket now. She had never seen him without a jacket in a professional context, and the absence of it made him look almost human, which was somehow more dangerous than the armor. He had a glass of water in his hand. He set it on the table beside her bed without asking if she wanted it. That was so purely him, anticipating needs and fulfilling them without consulting the person who had them, that she felt something lurch painfully in her chest. She looked at him. This man killed your father. She smiled, small and tired. Ihan, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved across his face that she was now reinterpreting in real time. Every expression she had ever catalogued on this face now running through a different filter. What had she thought was guardedness was strategy. What she had thought was private pain was guilt. What she had thought was love. What was that? How are you feeling? He asked. His voice was different in here, slightly, the volume of a man who was trying in his limited way to be gentle. I just had surgery and my babies were taken from me. She said lightly. How do you think I'm feeling? He sat in the chair beside her bed. This surprised her. She had expected him to stand. Ihan almost always stood, kept himself in a position of controlled elevation. Sitting felt like a concession. She filed this away. I will take you to see them in the morning, he said. I want to see them now. You need to rest. Ihan. She let his name carry a fraction of the real feeling underneath. Just enough to seem like raw emotion, not enough to reveal the earthquake happening inside her. They are newborns. They need their mother tonight, please. He looked at his hands. This was new. Ihan Han did not look at his hands. Ihan Han looked at people and rooms and situations with the direct, unwavering focus of a man who controlled everything his gaze touched. I handled this wrong, he said. She blinked, kept her face still. The protocol exists for security reasons, he continued. The Han heirs have historically been targets from birth. I implemented the transfer for their protection. A pause. I should have explained this to you beforehand. I did not. That was... He stopped as if the next word was physically difficult. That was wrong. Are you apologizing? She asked carefully. I am explaining, Ihan. Are you apologizing to me? The silence stretched. Yes, he said finally, quietly, like a man handing over something he had never handed over before and was not certain he was doing correctly. Under any other circumstance, this would have undone her completely. Ihan Han, the man who made senior crime figures sweat through expensive suits just by reading a document, sitting beside her hospital bed at 3 a.m, jacket off, telling her she was right and he was wrong. But she knew what she knew now, and the apology sat inside her chest not as warmth but as another piece of evidence. I want to see my sons, she said. He stood, extended his hand. She took it. His hand was warm and large and familiar, and she thought, you have held this hand in the dark and felt safe, and now you know what these hands have done. And she kept her face perfectly still. The corridor that led to the Han family wing had 2 guards posted at the entrance. Both men straightened when they saw Ihan coming. Not the practiced straightening of employees for a boss. The instinctive, involuntary straightening of men in the presence of something that commanded their nervous system before their brain caught up. One of them made brief eye contact with Olachi and immediately looked away. She understood now, watching it happen in real time, what it meant to be next to this man in his own world. She had seen glimpses in Lagos, but Lagos was not his territory. Seoul was different. Seoul was his. Every person they passed in this corridor communicated the same thing with their body language. He owns this space. We exist in it by his permission. And he walked through all of it without registering any of it. The way you stop seeing the furniture in a room you've lived in for years. He pushed open the door to the nursery. The room was extraordinary. She had not seen it before. They had moved the boys here without showing her. It was warm and softly lit, and there were 2 bassinets side by side, and in each bassinet a small boy was sleeping with his fists curled beside his face, in the particular fierce way of newborns who have opinions about everything already. She was across the room before she had decided to move. She stood over J1 first. His face in sleep was so purely itself, the round cheeks, the tiny perfect nose, the dark hair still damp at the edges. Then Jae-min, slightly smaller, his mouth doing that unconscious suckling motion that made something in her chest pull so hard it was almost pain. "Hello, babies," she whispered. "Mama's here." She was aware of Ihan standing behind her, staying back, giving her this. She did not turn around. "Pick one up," she said quietly. Silence. "Ihan, pick up your son." A long pause. Then the sound of careful movement. She watched from the corner of her eye as he reached into J1's bassinet with a precision and carefulness that she recognized as the same quality he brought to everything, the same focused deliberateness, and lifted his son against his chest. She turned then, and what she saw on his face, it was the crack she had been waiting 2 years to see fully, not a fracture line, a genuine opening, something that had no strategy in it and no calculation. He was looking at his son with an expression that had no armor anywhere in it, stripped of every layer that made him Ihan Han the organization, and leaving only a man holding something small and warm and entirely his, who looked back at him with unfocused newborn eyes, and grabbed his finger with startling strength. "Don't feel it," she told herself. "Don't you dare feel it." She felt it. The rage and the grief and the love all knotted together into something that had no clean name. She was looking at the man who had ended her father's life, looking at their son for the first time, with genuine undone wonder, and she could not reconcile these 2 truths, and she suspected she might never be able to. "He's strong," Ihan said quietly. "Yes?" she said. "He has your mouth." She said nothing. Ihan looked up from his son and looked at her. Really looked. The way he used to look at her in Lagos before Seoul made everything complicated, with that focused attention that made her feel like the only thing in his entire field of vision. "I don't want you to leave," he said. She held his gaze. "Then you should not have treated me like I was leaving was always the plan." "It wasn't." He stopped. Something complicated moved across his face. "Olachi, there are things about this situation that I handled incorrectly, I know that. But what you and I—" He looked for words in the way Ihan rarely had to look for words. "What happened between us, that was not incorrect." "What was it?" she asked quietly. He looked at her over their son's head. "The only thing in the last 2 years that I was certain about," he said. She found it at 5 a.m. Ihan had finally left, pulled out by a call that made Park Sung-jin appear at the nursery door with an expression that communicated now without saying it. He had looked back at her once before he followed Park out. A look she could not interpret, a look she was no longer sure she had ever interpreted correctly. She settled both boys, sat in the chair between the 2 bassinets, waited until their breathing deepened into sleep, then she went looking. Not his bedroom, too obvious, too surveilled. Not his office on the 45th floor. She would not get past the door without triggering something. But the private sitting room adjacent to the nursery, The room she had noticed because Ihan had stood in its doorway twice tonight for no visible reason, the way a person stands near something they are thinking about. The room was simply furnished. A desk, 2 chairs, a painting on the wall that was worth more than most buildings, and in the desk's lower drawer, unlocked, which should have told her something, a gray folder. Her hands were steady as she opened it. Her name was on the first page, not Olachi. Her full name, Olachi Okonkwo. Below it, her date of birth, her educational history, her professional history, every client she had ever worked with, every address she had ever lived at. Below that, a photograph. A school photograph. A girl of about 12 in a green uniform, her hair in 2 puffs, looking at the camera with the serious expression of a child who has learned already that the world requires seriousness. She remembered that uniform. She remembered that photograph. She remembered the day it was taken, 3 months before her father died. Below the photograph, her father's name, his file, his operation, the trade routes, the refusal of the Han acquisition offer, and then a single-page document. Dated, signed. She did not read the signature. She did not need to. She already knew whose hand had written it. She stood in the middle of the room and she let the truth arrive completely. No compression this time, no performance. She let it move through her the way a storm moves, fully without negotiation, taking everything in its path. She had been chosen. 2 years ago in that Lagos hotel, he had not seen her by accident. She had been selected, approached, maneuvered into his proximity, and everything that followed. Every midnight walk, every moment of careful, honest vulnerability, every I'm trying, every touch, every night, had been constructed on a foundation that he had laid before she even knew his name, and yet, the look on his face in the nursery when he held J1, that was not constructed, that she was certain of in her bones. Which made everything, every single thing, so much more complicated and so much more devastating than simple betrayal would have been. He planned to meet her. He did not plan to love her. The question that would keep her awake until dawn and beyond. Did the love make any of it forgivable? She put the folder back exactly as she had found it. She walked back to the nursery and sat between her sons, and she began to plan. The man who walked through the lobby of Han Empire Tower at 6:47 a.m. did not look like a threat. He was Nigerian, 50-something, medium height, a well-cut gray suit and a calm face, and carry-on luggage that suggested a man who had taken a last-minute flight and had not slept. He approached the reception desk with the unhurried confidence of someone who was exactly where he intended to be. "I am here to see my niece," he said. "Olachi Okonkwo. She is a guest on the medical floor." The receptionist, trained, professional, part of the Han security apparatus that monitored this lobby 24 hours a day, smiled politely and reached for her phone. 3 minutes later, Park Sung-jin appeared from a private elevator. He looked at the man. The man looked back at him with a very particular quality of stillness. "Mr. Dre," Park said carefully. "I'm afraid Mr. Han is not available to receive." "I did not ask to see Mr. Han," Uncle Dre said pleasantly. "I asked to see my niece and her newborn sons." He paused. "Just a beat, just enough. I'll wait here while you make the call. Take whatever time you need." Park looked at him for a long moment. Then he took out his phone. Ihan was in the 42nd floor room when the call came through. The Busan situation had been resolved in the way Han situations were typically resolved, efficiently and without room for future repetition, and he was reviewing the outcome documentation when Park's name appeared on his screen. "There is a man in the lobby," Park said, without preamble. "He says he is Olachi's uncle. His name is Emeka Dre Okonkwo." The room went very quiet. Ihan set down his pen. "Okonkwo," he repeated. "Yes." A pause so precise and so controlled that Park on the other end of the line held his breath. "Describe him," Ihan said. Park described him. Ihan's eyes closed for exactly 2 seconds. When they opened, the expression on his face was one that the men in that room had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not calculation. It was something that in another man would have been called dread. "Do not let him leave," Ihan said quietly, "and do not let him reach the upper floors." He paused. "I will come down." He put the phone in his pocket. He stood at the window for a moment, looking out over Seoul the way he always looked at it, like a man surveying territory. And for the first time the city did not look like something he owned. It looked like something he might lose. He had prepared for many things in his life. He had prepared for rivals and betrayals and the particular brutal mathematics of running an empire where loyalty was always conditional. He had not prepared for this. He had not prepared for the moment when the past arrived in his lobby with carry-on luggage and asked for his woman by name. He straightened his jacket. He walked to the elevator. The doors opened. He went down to meet the man who knew everything. In the elevator going down, Ihan's phone buzzes. A message from a number he has not seen active in over a year. A number that belongs to a man who should, by all accounts, have no reason to be contacting him. The message reads, "She knows about the file. She found it at 5 a.m., and she is not running, Ihan. She is planning. You taught her well. 3 floors above the lobby, in the nursery, Olachi is feeding Jae-min. Her face is calm, her eyes are clear. Her phone is in her hand and she is typing a message to someone who is not her uncle. Someone whose name we have not heard yet. Someone who, when we meet them in episode 3, will change everything we think we know about who Olachi Okonkwo actually is. She was never just a girl with a broken bottle. She was never just the woman who loved him. She was never just the mother of his sons. She was always the end game, his or someone else's.